think just to start off, Dr. Sizakele. So she is, firstly, she's one of our patrons at Valuate. So thank you very much for that. So she is one of the Valuate family members. So if I slip up and call her Aunt Zah, just know I'm talking to her, because we fondly call her at Valuate Aunt Zah. So just a heads up on that one. But I think just to start us off, to tell us a bit about yourself. When I was reading your profile, it said you're a multinationally anchored citizen, and I went, what does that mean? Okay. So it is very interesting. I know you've worked several places, and which, really sort of made sense why your profile said that. But take us through that, your background in terms of where you were born, all the different places that you've been, and the different, the work that you've done previously to starting your own practice.
Wow. Did you say we have 30 minutes, or you said we have the whole day?
30 minutes.
No. So my name is Sizakele. I'm a middle child and an only girl, which is very special in my life. I have an older brother. I had an older brother and a younger brother. Born in Soweto, schooled in Swaziland, and studied all over the world, like I was saying earlier. I had occasion to go to NYU, to Harvard, to the New School for Social Research, which is also in New York, and then have come full circle with my PhD qualification from this. The things that have interspersed my learning have been working. So I started work, I literally from my first degree, I knew that I wanted to go into advertising. So the first bit of work I did was on the advertising and identity. And I was looking specifically at how the consumer who's Black is reflected in advertising. That was many moons ago, and those challenges still remain today. And then had occasion to work in ad agencies. So I worked at Herd Boys, which was South Africa's first Black-owned and Black-managed ad agency. I was the only rose amongst the thorns, who were boys. And then left to go to South African tourism, where I had occasion in the role of Chief Operating Officer to represent our country and tell our story to the world. Actually, that's when Mr. Vikela and I first met, because what was joyful for me about that experience was having an opportunity to reverse the narrative that the world had about South Africa. We were either Mandela's children, or we were a nation of thugs. And somewhere in the middle was a missing piece about just how beautiful we are. So I had occasion to do that. I've also had occasion to work in financial services, but my joy comes from just running my own practice. Being independent means that I can choose the places and the people with whom I work, but it also means that I have to work twice as hard, because if you're self-employed, you don't have guaranteed income. So nobody pays your pension fund and your medical insurance and all of that. So what I do in my practice today is work with leaders to build brands of high influence. And those brands tend to grow people and companies instead of just collecting profit. So that's the précis.
Oh, wow. Well, that's incredible. I love the fact that, especially with, I think, starting from your time in South African tourism, you spoke about, telling the story of us as South Africans. And it almost seems like that's it's been, something that you've taken even into your practice, because it is important for us as individuals to tell our own stories, or us as a nation to tell our own stories, which is one of the reasons why I love this platform, because we get to profile, a lot of women that you would not necessarily hear about in mainstream media. So that is really exciting. So I want to ask, actually, just, going on to my next question from the platform, and this is now what you have coined, the term, the entrepreneurship term that you have coined. We have you have mom entrepreneurs, you have Instagram entrepreneurs there. I think that space has just been, it's so big right now, and everybody is part of it. So who here has heard of the term entrepreneur, and what do you think it means? I'm going to call on you if you don't raise your hand. I'm just saying.
Can I answer?
Yes, Vic.
No, I know the answer. So you can.
Oh, you know the answer. We know you know the answer. Okay, who knows?
Can I attempt something? I don't know the answer, but when I saw the name Fentrepreneur, I just actually thought that the person that came up with that name is very creative and must be very innovative, you know, and to just put a joke on it. I mean, if you think of Somizi and some of the words that he comes up with, you know, and because there are people that actually like him for who he is. So when you think of entrepreneur, whoever has come up with that name, and it can only be Zar. So you then have to think about it and just see what it means and see if you can actually associate with from that name. But it's obviously innovation, I would think. So yeah, that's my attempt. I'm not sure if I'm right.
Well done, sweetie. That was a brilliant attempt.
Can I give it a shot as well?
Yes, Nonhlanhla.
So for me, I would say key things: being a risk taker, a creative, and someone who has an end goal. Yes.
That was very nice.
Ina says the word deals with people who are involved in business, business for leaving. I think something along those lines.
Business for leaving. Okay. I'm taking all these down for you.
Business for a living, I think, is what you want to say.
Okay. So I think, this is, and I'm going to ask you as well, how you came about with the terminology and what it really means. But, during my research as well, I saw that a lot of it, with your firm, you support, female entrepreneurs, which I think is really fantastic because you don't get a lot of companies who set out to really focus on female entrepreneurs. It's either they just focus on entrepreneurs, small businesses or whatever the case is. But for a firm to say, okay, no, we're going to actually go out and set out and focus on female entrepreneurs. So can you just tell us about that, how you came about? Because it's a very exciting, and I'm glad that you coined it and it's yours. Anybody who uses this must give you your coins because that's important. But please tell us more about that.
I think it comes from several places, but the first piece is if you are annoyed about something in the world or you recognize a gap in the world, fill it. Don't just sit in your corner and whinge about an absence. So for me, I was incredibly impatient with this idea of people referring to women entrepreneurs or women in business or females in business. And I decided that surely there is a much more dignified way to reflect and respect female entrepreneurs. So the idea of entrepreneur is essentially a female entrepreneur of a different kind though, because the research we've done shows us that not every female entrepreneur can be a entrepreneur, because a entrepreneur has 5 key distinct characteristics, and we call them the 5G community. So the first piece is an individual who seeks greatness and wakes up and works for that greatness. The second G is the idea of growth. So that individual is focused on growth, their own growth, the growth of their friends, family, and their community. The third one is this idea of generosity, that you want to succeed not just for yourself, but you want to succeed with others. Did I say 3? Yes. The fourth, so it's generosity, it's growth, it's greatness. It's, I've now forgotten the other 2. I'll remember in 2 minutes. But essentially, it was important that we create archetypes that feed the individual who qualifies to be a entrepreneur. I am concerned at the number of young females I see who rush to claim they're running a business when essentially what they've done is gained money from a passion point. You're not running a business if you don't have a registered entity. You're not running a business if you don't have corporate governance in place. You're not running a business if you're not serving a need in society. You're not running a business if it's not paying you and generating some form of livelihood for another person. So yeah, I can earn money from my hobby, but it doesn't mean that I can elevate my hobby to a business. So the idea of coining the term was about not just being annoyed, but fixing what was missing in society. The second piece was, I really think it's important for all of us on the call to recognize that every day we have an opportunity to reverse the narrative that says we are consumers of knowledge. I'm challenging each and every one of us to contribute to knowledge. So when you write things, when you get published, when you get cited, when you get referenced, it is you enriching the pool of knowledge and adding a critical and missing Black female voice to that knowledge. And ranting on Twitter is not a contribution to knowledge, just so you know my view.
Wow, wow. I'm like here taking notes because I'm being schooled right now. Okay. I mean, this is just incredible. For firstly, the entrepreneur, because I think I called myself an entrepreneur. Now I'm like, okay, now am I actually, servicing a community? I think the generosity part of the 5Gs, it's really, really, and this is something I'm going to implement as well, in my business model and just in my life overall. And I think all of us, that's something that we should be looking. I know with Valourpreneur, one of our programs, so we have a few people, youngsters who are trying to venture into entrepreneurship. So it's exciting to have you on this platform and they can hear from this and not just from Uncle Vic all the time. So that's great. I'm interested to hear who here is trying to venture into business. We have a lot of females here. I mean, we know we have a few guys, and thank you guys for coming. You're very much welcome to these platforms all the time. But who here is, interested in entrepreneurship, and what has been your take just from this piece, this question alone? And would you consider yourself an entrepreneur? Anyone? I know people who are.
I will point to people that I know are running businesses of their own, and maybe they're shy of.
Please.
Of making themselves.
Please,
I know Cynthia runs her own business, and I know Kwesi runs her own business.
Yeah, and
Tolly. And she's got a hand.
I think, isn't it?
Would you ladies consider yourself entrepreneurs? And what is your take on what Zad just said?
I think Tolly's got her hand up.
Yes, Tolly, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
I love how Dr. Zakia has put together the 5 important things that you need to have. Yes, we're still waiting for the 4th and the 5th one, but I could easily identify with it that what drives you is your passion. And from a spiritual perspective, I always see it as whatever calling or gift God has given you, if you live up to it, you will certainly grow, whether you call yourself an entrepreneur or whatever. And that's what drives me. It was looking for what gift has God given me. And part of these many gifts that I have is about making sure that any individuals that I interact with gains growth from me. My passion is youth. And I mentor graduates as well. It is not, in fact, I get emotional about it because a few minutes ago, a young graduate that had asked me to help them to put together a strategy beginning of this year. She's now called out back to me to say, listen, I'm struggling to get this company to pay your invoice. And I said to her, Relo, you need to remember this. I'm your mentor. There's invoice that needs to be paid, but what comes first with me is to teach you to be able to stand up for yourself. This invoice will be paid by your company. It's not going to come from your pocket. So that's what, for me, this is all about. That it's not money first. Yes, it has to come in because I'm trying to build a business here, but let's mentor, let's educate, and bring more young females into the space as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you know, Sizakele, you'll be very.
I've just remembered. So
Yes.
thank you for that nudge. So the first G is actually gift. It's about recognizing the gift you bring and give to the world. And the last G is about grit, which is G-R-I-T. And grit is about resilience. Grit is about the ability to keep coming back each time you encounter an impediment. Grit is about remembering why you started in the first place, because too many of us start businesses because my friend has started an event planning company, so I'm going to do the same. If you're starting things because that's what everybody's doing, it means when everyone stops doing that, are you then also going to stop? You've got to be able to choose your own path and carve your own lane and be very clear about why you got started. So now that we have the 5 Gs, it's a gift, you're aware of what your gift is. Greatness, you pursue greatness. Greatness is how you answer the phone, how you keep your commitments, no typos on your proposal documents, not getting familiar with people. When you meet somebody, you ask them how they want to be addressed. You just don't take just permission to truncate someone's name. Oh, her name is Sizakele, let me call her Caesar. We don't do that. It's also about growth and it's about generosity. So now you have the 5 Gs. And now I feel I can rest because it's been rattling in the back of my brain.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm definitely taking this away with me. I think this is probably going to be one of the biggest takeaway. I'm a visual person, so I'm going to print it up and see it every day. So you know, I was just saying with what Sizakele was saying about mentorship, and this is leading to my next point. You know, you are very big on coaching and mentorship. You know, you've said that. With the entrepreneurs, you know, it's a special breed of women entrepreneurs who are the seed to Africa's future growth. And you started a platform called The Exchange, which you fund and you also, you know, manage. And I mean, it's just incredible. You don't have a lot of people doing that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And particularly, you know, we have people like Sizakele here who are also very passionate about coaching, but how do, you know, firstly, young women like myself would want to get coached or mentored, get involved, and then also anybody else who would want to get involved from a mentorship or coaching, get involved.
So the exchange started out of my own, whenever I speak, I get young people say to me, hi, could you please mentor me? Hi, could you please, da, 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 da. And what tends to happen is we have an avalanche of requests and I only have this much bandwidth. So much as I'd love to take on everybody and do everything for everyone, part of knowing how to grow is also understanding your own boundaries and your own limitations, because it stops you from making promises you can't keep. So integrity is very important to me. I have to do what I say and say what I will do. So the exchange then was my effort and attempt at creating a platform where young people just didn't hear from me, because when you're engaging with me, it's just me. So the exchange then is a platform that we created so that I could invite other women who are in my circle. So in the end, we have 10 lionesses who are women who have some level of wisdom to share, and 10 cubs. And the idea is it's a half a morning session. We arrive at a venue, depending which hotel I have bugged for free venue. And we use the first 5 minutes, just an exchange and an introduction. And then we have a series of engagements where the cubs can then engage with each lioness one-on-one. And you're open because we create the space for you to feel safe. And when we share, we're not sharing from a top-down platform that says, this is what we've done, this is what we know, therefore this is what you must do. No, we're sharing from as human beings who are female, these are the paths we've taken, these are the mistakes we have made, and you will make your own mistakes. So don't, I think it's a dangerous thing when people who've come before us tell us, no, I'm trying to prevent you from making mistakes. We will make mistakes. The focus though is that not to make the same mistake twice, because then it means you're not growing, right? So be open to learning, because mistakes are feedback. It's just an opportunity for you to try something differently. So the exchange happens the last Saturday of every November, and it's a free platform. When we send call outs in about September, and we invite young people to submit a written proposal. Why do you want to be invited to the table with the lionesses? And more importantly, more than just the people we tend to choose are people who are already doing something in their community. I am very interested, and I have a bias for young people who focus on the giving instead of the getting.
Oh, wow. Incredible. Incredible. I think it is very important. I went to a school where community, work was very much encouraged. It was actually compulsory. And I think it was great because at 12 years old, 13 years old, being, forced at the beginning to say you have to take part in the community. It's something that now I look for, in every platform, like, okay, what can I, even at work, where there's employment and employee engagement activities. It's not something I have to do, but I gravitate towards such things, and then in the community as well. So it is, very important that us as young people, we take part in our communities. I think one of the last sessions that we had with the Mogul Masterclass was a lady who opened an NPO, and she was talking about, being involved with the community. So that's very, very important. So I want to go back to, you mentioned earlier that you were the only child, the middle child, and the only girl, right? So, I mean, and that's for me is very interesting because you are very, you're very sure of yourself, your voice, you have, your confidence. And then later on, also in your career, working in a space where, you're the only female, surrounded by a lot of men. Where did you find your voice? Were you born with it? Was it a defining moment? Something that just pushed you to say, no, I need to, be firm with my voice and really know what it is that I want. What was that moment?
There were several things. So the first one is being the only girl means I was always in service, right? Either you must respect your older brother, you must look after your younger brother. So no one ever just looked after me. I was always in service to other people. So eventually you learn to find your own voice, to say no to the older one, and you can pinch the younger one, which is not nice, but that's what I did. Yeah. And then the second the second piece, which was really formative for me, was being sent away to Swaziland when I was 7. So I didn't grow up in a household with my mother. I didn't come home from school every day. Boarding school teaches you very, very quickly that if you leave your shoes on the pitch, they don't find their way back to your cupboard, right? And if you lose them, my mother, who didn't have a lot of money, she wasn't going to be replacing my shoes every week. Like, you lose a pair of shoes, the whole year you run out, because we just don't replace things because you're being careless. Mm-hmm. So being in boarding school and being away from home taught me to grow up very, very quickly, because I had to take care of myself and take care of my things. But another thing also happened in boarding school. I was bullied by a girl whose name I still remember. Can you believe this? And the reason she literally would come to me, because I was quite a good student. I applied myself, so I always got these top grades, because I knew and understood that when my mother is working 3 jobs to get me to a good school, my only deal was to excel in school. And she wasn't rich enough for me to repeat a grade. So I knew I had to apply myself, and I did. But part of what Wendy, my bully lady, would do then, she would give you the maths test and say, please fill out my answers. And the first few times I would, because I was very afraid of her. She was a much bigger girl. Until I spoke to another lady who, her name was Jackie Carrington, and she literally just adopted me. And she said to me, Wendy isn't going to stop bullying you until you use your voice. And even when your knees are shaking, I want you to go up to her and tell her that as much as she can hit you until she's tired, but she's never going to be as intelligent as you are. So go tell her that. So I rehearsed this. I must have rehearsed it for over 3 weeks. I'm going to, next time Wendy comes to me, this is what I'm going to say. And the moment came, and I stood there shaking in my boots, but I told her, I said, you're trying to beat out of me what God put into me, and that's not going to work. So from that moment on, I knew and understood that this that I am and the gifts that I carry is what I was born to do and to bring to the world. Nobody can take it away from me, but I have a responsibility to use it in service of others as well. So that's where my voice comes from. And that's where I think also just being raised by a mother who's the first feminist I know. I mean, she may not have used the term feminist to herself, but my mother's tries divorce. She's like, you're not going to respect me, I'm going to leave you. And she's worked hard. We've never had a Christmas lunch together because in all my school life, my mother worked. But I've understood the value of hard work. I've understood the value of self-reliance. I've understood the value of compassion and charity. I've understood that money is not a determinant to your success. It is also not an impediment. Your mind is.
Oh, wow. Wow. No, that is, I mean, that is just beautiful. I think it's so true to, you know, speaking about your gifts and your God-given gifts and your responsibility to use those gifts, you know, to help others. I remember when we were, you know, I mentioned earlier that you're a patron, and I remember when we were meeting one of the two students that you were sponsoring, you said to them, you know, they one just finished matric, and I think both of them just finished matric actually. You said in 20 years, what you want to know is what have you done to move humanity forward? And I think that's just testament to who you are as a person. Okay, everyone, please remember the chat box is open. Please do add, I know Dr. Sizakele wants to hear from other people. You know, she did say this from the beginning, you know, what is it? She said, she challenges all of us to contribute to knowledge. And this is where you start. There's a lot of young people here.
I remember my wife selling out Cynthia.
No, I think Oslitseho, you know, I know sometimes I pick on her, but I actually learned from her, because now I see she's picking on other people. So I'm gonna say I learned this from her. Okay, so there's a comment from Trina, and he says, you know, in our discussion, if I may ask, what will create a man of value while appreciating the participation of women on the discussion? I think, you know, we mentioned earlier, we want to bring men of value and women of celebrating women together. I think this is where we start. So who would like to take that?
I would like to, then, and I'm certain that Vic would also have something to add.
Yes.
I think for me, it's really, really important that you identify as human first, and then you become your gender. Because part of what we're seeing in society and these fault lines and the fractures that are happening is because all of us rush to be, I'm a man and I'm a woman. The minute you identify in those roles, then there's social conditioning that's attached to those roles. So if you're a man, you're told, boys don't cry, men must provide, men must be in charge, and men mustn't ask for directions. I mean, hello, if we're lost, ask for directions. On the other side, you have the notion of women must serve, women must obey, and women must women, literally, it's just, all of it is just about women must serve and men must lead. What I'm suggesting on this platform is patriarchy has damaged both men and women, because women feel erased, men feel abandoned. And I want us to get to a place where humans who are male can cry, and humans who are female can excel. Because when we all bring who we are as human beings, we make our lived experiences a lot richer, and we allow for healing to happen.
That right there is, I mean, healing. And it's I think particularly, this year we've all said, like a lot of people have said, this year is a year of spiritual awakening, which includes healing, because the year that was past, 2020, just forced all of us to sit down with yourself and your thoughts and all the trauma that you've been trying to run away from, all the the thorns that you've been trying to forget. All of it, you have to sit down with yourself and actually start your healing process, and only then will we get to that place that we want to. Vic, did you want to add something?
So hang on, just here's the last thought. Sorry, Vic.
No.
You are not your gender, you are your heart.
Okay.
That's a powerful thing, because just to, I'm not going to add to that, Zah. You've summed it up amazingly, and just that last point is powerful, because recently and it came from you, Zah, I was listening to Dreyer. Sorry, what's his first name again?
Wayne, Dr. Wayne.
Yes, you sent me yesterday, and he said something that was very powerful, which is this construct of who you are and manifesting who you are. And people tend to believe they manifest what you want. But what was really powerful was what he was saying, is that actually you manifest who you are. So the importance of that is that we are humans. And as human beings, if we classify ourselves, because gender is one classification, there are other classifications, rich, poor, race, etc., etc. We leave each other behind because we define ourselves in those boxes. And when you define yourself in that box and you leave people behind, then the challenge of the human race becomes serious, because we're interconnected. So the conversations must always be about how are we fulfilling the societal need of each other, and what then do we use from the different aspects of who we are to do that. But that was just, you summed it up.
Wow. This is why you guys are friends, eh?
Yes.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Just reading through the comment section, Sizakele says, glad to hear that our being the only daughters amongst brothers has helped with our growth. Confirmed. No, it absolutely does. I think it helps one grow, and also being the eldest, because I'm the eldest at home. I have 3 younger siblings, so that's really pushed me to find my voice from like young age. Tsecho says, such beautiful words, even when your knees are shaking, even when you're on your knees are shaking, and you need to use your voice. She goes on to say, I'm struggling with my own insecurities, and what you said gave me goosebumps, because that's something I'm learning to do, and it's so liberating. This is why we have these platforms, man. It's those little moments where you identify with somebody. For me, it's always been, I think when we first started, I said to Vic, I'm not too far from just turning 25, and I remember going through a quarter life crisis. And I think platforms like this, when you are in that space where you just as a young person don't know where your life is headed, it just seems like you're messing everything up. And then hearing other people's journeys and their stories, particularly women that you look up to, or just individuals that you look up to, hearing their stories is so important. And platforms like this are very important for that. I want to hear from everyone else, particularly about, I want to, continue with this theme of finding your voice. We speak about amplifying the voice, but when do you actually find your voice? the lionesses in this platform. I'm gonna start with you, Oslet, because you are it. You're like hashtag goals. I do like you.
Like, Refilwe. You know, actually, I mean, I was thinking about what Zah said about just finding your voice. And the thing is, within finding your voice, you can also maybe expatiate it to say finding your authentic voice. Because, you know, the thing is, I mean, if you think about finding your voice, I mean, it talks to so many things. You know, there's somebody mentioned, you know, them relating to Zah's story about being a middle child or being bullied, I think, and something about the knees, and you know. So I'm just thinking that, you know, when you find your voice, it's almost like you being able to walk your own path, or you being able to say things without worrying about how people are going to judge you.
Yes.
Or, you know, or you, because if you think about it, as a woman, I think many of us, you know, you become scared of actually raising your voice in certain platforms that are maybe full of men, you know. So how do you find your voice as a woman in a platform, you know, faced of men, or, you know, sorry, honey, but you know how I feel, but, you know, with men that
Speak,
actually,
baby, speak.
that actually come across, you know, very confident, and actually some of them, in fact, you know, stealing some of your ideas, because, you know, you say what you think, which is your voice, but then because maybe some people don't hear you because you're a woman, you know, when they say it in their voice, they're being heard. You know, how do you as a woman find that voice of confidence enough for everyone to hear you?
Yes.
I don't know if I'm, so Zah, I don't know if I'm.
No, you're absolutely making sense. You're absolutely making sense. And I think it's, you know, for me, so I came into the space, you know, I'm being very fortunate that I think I was I was born at the right time, if that says anything. So I was born in 1994. So this is, you know, we're moving to, so I've never had to feel like I don't belong in my own country. But then also starting to work, you know, not that everything is it's perfect or it's good right now, but when I look back into like some of even movies or documentaries about how women were treated, you know, and I'm like, this is like shocking, because I've, you know, just being a confident young person entering the workplace, women like, you know, Dr. Sizakele, you know, women like you, also Tshepo, who've come into that space and these platforms, and you're really actually showing these men that, hey, you will listen to me, you know. So when a little Refilwe comes through and they're speaking in the boardrooms and they're raising their hands or whatever the case is, it's not so much of a shocker. I think we're really making way in terms of ensuring that the female voice is being heard. We just need to expand it now to other, you know, communities as well, you know, other you know, minority communities, you know, besides just women. But when you speak women, you know, Black women, women of color, Dr. Segel, we spoke about transgender women, you know. So it is like, you know, we need to keep pushing. There is no bar. We need to keep pushing. But I must say that, you know, especially for your Bonolos, for Carabelos who just finished matric, by the time they get to the corporate space, the conversations will be different from when they, you know, conversation were being had 1994, for example. So it is, I think we're making way. So I have a few hands.
I think
Yeah.
let me help you, because I know you were chatting. So I think you've got a bit of an order here. So I think you had Nonhlanhla, and then you had Reggie, and then you've got Bulelwa, and I think you then got Polly.
Okay. Let's start.
Arabelle as well. Sorry.
Oh, God.
Oh, sorry, Calvin.
I think my take on finding your voice starts from knowing yourself. If you don't know yourself, you won't know what you sound like, you won't know what you stand for. And if you don't know you, you can't convince other people to listen to you if you can't listen and sit and listen to yourself first. So I believe also that's one of the things we neglect as humans, that we don't sit with ourselves, we don't get to know ourselves first before we start going out to the world and telling the world who we are, or what we want them to think about us. So I think a very essential part is knowing ourselves first before we find our voice and use it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a student on Valued. Yay.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. I think whoever's just spoke now, I agree with you about this idea of knowing yourself, but also belonging to and with yourself. It's important. And part of what helps with that is solitude. Too many of us spend our lives in loud environments, including our own thoughts. So until you can quiet your mind, because the spirit voice speaks in a whisper. So if you are loud, you are not going to hear it. So yeah, I agree with that.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think the next person is Reggie.
Yeah, thank you. I think we all think more or less the same things. Dr. Sizakele, I just want to say I'm quite thank you for the insightful session. And I must say, I'm so impressed that at that age, when you're so young at boarding school, you already had your voice. It's not many people who find it at that stage. You're one of the fortunate ones. But I think we're more or less talking about the same thing, that really finding the voice for me is agree with everyone. It's about knowing yourself. It's about, being comfortable in your own skin, knowing what makes you tick, being comfortable with your failures, and embracing them and learning from them. And also being compassionate with yourself, because I think we tend to be very hard on yourself. So basically just really, really being comfortable in your own skin. It's much easier to actually, make sure that you're heard.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that, Reggie.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. If I can add on to what Reggie just said, as well as we also have to balance this idea of being true to myself and not causing any harm. It's really important because I've seen young people, particularly with this cancel culture, not being true to myself. But if you're causing harm, then you're not exactly contributing to healing.
Wow, that is so true. Okay, I think Sizakele, I think that's who's next. I see the hand up.
Okie dokie. I wanted to say how I found my voice. I remember very well, it was in high school. I think I was in grade 10, 9 or 10. And I happened to be one of the smart kids in the class, you falling in the top 5. And a teacher, it was a biology class. And he'd been asking the questions and you have to lift your hand up and answer. And I would never do it. I would wait for everyone else to say what they have to say. And then lastly, I would then say something. And this teacher said to me, he was so annoyed. He was very light skinned and you could see him turning red. He was frustrated because he was getting all the wrong answers. And he said to, how in school, they would call us by our surnames. And he was like, Makumsha. I'm like, yes, teacher. He says, here's something that annoys me about you. I know you have the answer and you're not saying anything. Can you please give us the answer? Oh my goodness. What he did not realize is from that moment, I never kept quiet. I always, if I have the answer, and I will say it. And such things come from when you speak up, especially for girls, when you speak up in any environment, and so I never wanted to be seen as I'm too forward, so I would allow other people to do that. So in that moment, I learned that, because he said to me, you're smart. that erased the we are papa or you too forward. And I took that with me and moved on. So that's what also we need to realize also within our homes as parents. When they have to say something, stop saying we are papa, shut up. You know, just channel, because you don't see what you're doing to that child. So we need to be careful about that. And one thing that was I also learned was just from Dr. Zah and one of the ladies that spoke now, is we are bound to make errors in our lives. But the important thing is self-forgiveness. I had to learn to forgive myself with some errors that I've made in my life for me to be able to move forward and say, it's okay. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you so much. That was great. I think it is important. I'm glad you spoke about with parents and how they speak to the kids at home, because that is so important. That's where it starts actually, with your parents affirming you, particularly as a little girl. It's so important. Okay, Pulelwa, I think you're next, and then we'll go to Karabelo.
Well, thank you, Valley Edge community, and thanks to Zah. I must say, what I just wanted to say, I'm hearing the call that she is making, and I do feel quite challenged, and all because there are two components that come to mind for me. It's the issue of priorities, and there's also the issue of timing. For example, I've had a life of doing corporate life and being married and raising children, and further staying with my elderly mom. Now, I remember when I left corporate 5 years ago, in 2015 in particular, it was a question of saying, I need to just be a wife and a mom and support the family. And I did that. And after just my daughter finishing and going to varsity, the youngest in the family, it was a question of my mom, who has since died, and we buried her on the 6th of February this year. And it's a question of saying, you know what, though, you sit with so much, and yet there is such a greater need out there, and you are not contributing as you should. So I'm just so grateful that I joined this session this morning. And I'm so grateful to Zah, in terms of she's just amplifying the call within me of really giving, whether it's through writing or through platforms or whatsoever. So thank you.
Hello, Bulelwa.
Hello, Star.
Thank you, Vic, for bringing us together. And please accept my most deepest condolence on the passing of your mother. I hope in time your heart heals.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pulelwa. Karabelo, do you still have your hand up? I can't see you on my screen. Karabelo.
I think she might have fallen off. Shame. Karabelo is just the area she's in.
Okay, I see also Tsoka has her hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry. Dr. Zah Marutlulle.
Yes.
I actually wanted to ask a question now from a corporate perspective, and maybe the question also is, how do we help women use their voice at the table? Because what I've found is there are many women in leadership positions. I mean, if you find, or if you look at just what happened to Basani, for instance, African Bank. Now, many women actually are there in leadership positions, but they actually don't have a voice. So how can you get into that space, to actually help women be able to find that voice? It's not like women don't know who they are. They know the work, the path that they've walked. They're actually quite authentic. But there's this thing about towing the line when you're in corporate, what you need to say, what you can't say, the politics of business. Now, how do you navigate that? And this, I'm actually posing this because I want us to help others that are actually coming behind us.
Not a problem. And thank
And
you.
also, sorry, and I wanted to just mention that, you know, I liked what you said when you first talked about the G's of generosity, growth, and that part of growth with others. You know, and maybe that's what Bulelwa is talking about, you know, because, you know, we need to expatiate in what we're doing. How do we help each other? How do we grow with each other? How do we help others that are coming grow with us?
Okay. So I can answer it from multiple ways. The first piece is, and when I say this, women think I'm being unkind. The enemy to women is women themselves. It is comfortable for us to speak and say men hold us back, white people hold us back, but also we as a community of Black women, we don't support each other. And until we can learn to show up for one another and show up with one another, we are never going to be able to sustain the impact we want to make in society, in churches, in food groups, in event planning, and in corporate. So the first piece is we have to stop competing with one another. Unfortunately, where this sense of competition comes from is, if you remember when we were being raised, as children, we are socialized, particularly girls, to play nicely together. So I bring my primer stove, you bring your doll, someone else brings the broom, and we're raised in this culture that assumes that we will always get along. But the world of school is about competition, and the world of work is also about competition. What we need to do very, very quickly for those of us who are raising girls or nurturing girls is to teach them the joy of excelling and how, if you pursue excellence, someone is going to be left behind. Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's your best friend. So that's the first piece. The second piece as well is I have always, because my word, which is the word that I chose when I was 30, I sat with myself and said, what should the rest of my life be about? And the word I settled on was influence. My word, not how these people are using it as social influence, I don't know what that is, but what I mean by influence is the ability to affect and impact people I come into contact with. So when I take on a corporate assignment, it was because I believed there was a way that I could influence that environment. And when I left, it's because either the room was shrunk or I felt that my soul was dying. So I understand completely what Basani is going through, because I went through the same thing when I worked at a financial services brand. I mean, there's an aging white man there who does half my job for twice the salary I was being paid. But that's not the point. The point is, when you're a woman who is Black and need to find other advocates in the corporate, where do you find them? How do we show up for one another without throwing each other under the bus? So that's the first piece. The other piece is, I do think that you have to be okay with being the only person who speaks truth to power. Because you can either succeed or be liked. I don't know whether it's possible to do both. But I know that for all the times that I have been true to myself, I was able to sleep better at night. Because you have to live with yourself. You don't necessarily have to live with the people who are in your fan club. So I guess this is a long-winded way of saying, trust your instinct, it's there to guide you. Use your voice and be okay with it. My mother always said that a principle isn't a principle until it costs you something. So if you know that your heart is leading you in the right direction, speak up. But Desmond Tutu says we shouldn't be raising our voices, we should be improving our argument. So using your voice is not about screaming, it's about adding value and substance to the spaces you occupy. So I hope in part I have answered you, Ms. Darling Heart, let's say.
No, that was great. That was great. Okay, I was told that Cynthia had her hand up. So I'm going to ask Cynthia to just, to speak. But before that, Tina had a follow-up question to his earlier question. Let me just see if I can find it. But the follow-up question, it was about men, and when you spoke about humans, the fact that we're humans. And the follow-up question is, do men really take women as humans in the entire world? And if the answer is yes, do the current stats prove that when it comes to president in the world, okay, where should we start, basically? But I think for me, this is, I don't think, yes, answer I'm going to give you, but I also want the two gentlemen that I know who are here to answer this, because I've never really thought of this. Do men really see women as humans before? So I'm going to ask Vic, and I'm also going to ask Derek to also add a comment in particular to this question. But let's start with you, Ansar.
I was going to do exactly that, which is the author of the question, how do you answer that question? Because there's a difference. When somebody says, I respect women, when you actually mean that I like their physical body parts, that's not respect. When you say, yes, of course I see them as human, but then you think telling sexist jokes when we are in the room or not is fine. That's not about seeing us as humans. So the question is thrown right back at you. When you look at the person who looks back at you when you are looking in the mirror, does that person respect and accept women as human beings?
Lena, that's for you.
And it's a yes or no question. Maybe he can. Okay. Maybe he's got challenges with his mic.
Yeah. Okay, Vic, you can answer that, and then also Derek. Are there any other gentlemen in this platform?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, for me, absolutely. And what as men we have to do is continuously improve who we are in terms of our sight and the lenses that we use. Because yes, we can say we do that, but to every point that Zah is making, the jokes that you crack, the tolerance that you have to some of the things that happen, the associations that you have, the behaviors that take place, they're still inculcated, and they've got the subconscious habit. So they may not be in the conscious mind, but you still maintain them in the subconscious mind because you're still actually contributing in one form or another. Whether or not you're saying something, whether or not you're doing something, you are in some form. So I think it's that need to start reversing that in more ways than one, and being conscious of the fact that you reverse it and understanding that there's a long way to go. And one of the things for me about this is just listening. Men need to just listen for once and not assume that they know.
Cool. Derek, are you there? Can you hear? Can you speak? Derek is the other hosted with Valour. Sorry.
Hi everybody. I was actually today trying to spend much more time listening than talking, but it's a very, very interesting session, and it's very encouraging to see the level of engagement as well. Sizakele, a lot of very valuable points about the five Gs, and one of them in Kuna's questionnaire is, why is it that the presidents of the world are not all female? There's an interpretation of it. Why is it not more women in those sort of positions? And if you look at the performance of someone like Merkel, you realize that from a sample of one, it is probably the direction the world needs to take. Is female leadership needs to be respected more. However, there has to be a role played by men to firstly see women as human, but not just human, to see women as equal. Maybe even to see them as better. Because what tends to happen, and I see it in my own eyes, is when you sit in rooms and in meetings, so often the first voice is the male voice, the last voice is the male voice. And I think a lot can be done around that. But from a man's perspective, it probably is going to take, or my view as well, is probably going to take a genuine effort to ensure that there's balance in the interactions that you have, you know. And so I think men do take women as human, but conveniently so. Not necessarily at all times when one should. And as a father now raising two daughters, it becomes very, very important for me to try and work in such a way that my daughter's first day in the employment world, because my daughters are still young, they're still in school. One is in high school now. But the first feeling they get when they work into a corporate is not going to be the same feeling that they leave a corporate with many, many, many years later. And I know even when we were discussing the men's session last week, there was an issue of years and years of working in corporate with all the experience that one can gain as a woman. You don't necessarily find it a less hostile place. You almost learn to survive it better, to navigate it better. But it in itself doesn't seem to move to a better place. So I think it's important that we do recognize women as human, but respect them as human. And I think the respect side is where it seems to fall apart.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Derek. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think let's because looking at the time now.
I think you've got Cynthia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cynthia, you wanted to add something earlier on.
Yes, hello. Good morning to everybody. Value Adds and Dr. Marutlulle. Sorry, I'm not perfect in Sotho. I try. I think perhaps my voice will be slightly different, but I'm glad that most of the people have raised this. Having worked in a corporate environment in the financial services sector, I would like to raise the issue of identity. When Dr. Sizakele said that we first identify ourselves as human, and then we go into a women role. I have a different take, because then as a woman, having worked in a predominantly male environment, especially white, and lately it has become Black, I just found that both of them, they behave the same towards women. And not perhaps wanting to not all women, it's my experience again, and I would like to own it as a Black woman, that you are being, if you're sitting in a boardroom as an executive, you are aggressive. If you're not aggressive, if you do not agree to things that they do, you are aggressive. And in many instances, people who have come up to the level that I went to, then they'll be taken out of the environment if they do not do what is expected of them. And for me, I think first, perhaps I would like Dr. Sizakele to say, when you are a person like me, how do you view that? Because myself, I see myself as a Black woman and a human being. And when I see males, even now in business, because I have not gone out in the financial services sector, you'll find that there'll be others still who'll be ganging up against you as a Black woman to say, not that one, she's aggressive. Make sure that she doesn't get through. So how do you make sure that you see yourself as a woman, and then you gradually you're gonna say, now I'm human. I'm gonna stand by that point, because I'm looking also at the numbers of the Black CEOs and your Black directors in like listed businesses and all of that. So for me, I think we're not yet in a space where we can say we're human first and then we're Black women. I'm gonna say Black women because I've worked also with white women sitting in the same boardroom and see the treatment, especially coming from Black men, how they treat white women compared to Black women.
Thank you, Cynthia. And I share your experience, and I have great compassion for the pain that comes with that. I was very senior at a financial services brand. I was looking after 12 territories on the continent, and I dared use my voice, and I clashed with a CEO who was female and white. So I have a lived experience of what it's like to feel othered in an environment where you are hired for your excellence, but you're demonized for your confidence. Unfortunately, that is the brunt of what the cost of participating, because leadership, the corporate environment by definition, is a masculine environment. Its energy is about dog eats dog. Its energy is about get in there first and shut the door behind you. All of the makings of what helps you succeed in corporate, all of those things have a masculine energy. So when I say that we have to see ourselves as human first, it is how you treat yourself, not how they treat you, because you can insist on how other people treat you, but they see it from how you treat yourself. So I have always integrated myself as I am human first. Here's what being human first means. It means I allow myself to feel fear, impatience, anger, confusion, and all of those things, despite my role. Whether I am CMO or COO, I never behave like I know everything. I also never behave like I've got it all figured out. I also never behave like I'm untouchable. So I know that particularly the financial services sector is incredibly raw and ruthless. Management consulting is the same. In fact, in any environment where there aren't enough of us, we are always going to feel like the minorities. If there's any encouragement I can give you, is to find advocates in your environment, people who see and feel and believe in the change that you would love to see. And secondly, to work with the willing. I understood after inheriting a department of 372 people, half of whom ended up in the department because the organization couldn't put them anywhere else. Not because they were good, but because it was convenient. I understood the cost of being true to myself. And I will encourage you that the bruises will come and the pains will come, but there are 10 people you are shifting just by being true to yourself. And please don't stop being true to yourself and walking only with the willing. I hope that will help you.
Well, that was great. That was really great. I think we're going to end it there. Be true to yourself. I think that has been the theme here. What it means to be human. So thank you so much, Dr. Sizakele Marutlulle, our Auntie Zar at Valour. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you everyone as well who took time off your Saturday morning to come onto this platform. I think at the peak we had 35 people, probably jump off because of network problems or load shedding. This is South Africa, but thank you so much everyone for coming through. There has been a lot of comments, and I'm sorry I could not get through to all of them, but just reading through all of them, the messaging has really just been the same. So nothing that really stood out that we missed there. And from my side, that is it. Thank you. Have a lovely Saturday. I'm going to hand over back to our founder, Mr. Vigela Rankin.
Geez, founder, you make me feel old. Thank you very much. I'm going to end off. I have the pleasure of starting and ending. So my task is very simple. I just want to end off with just two things. Well, not two things, two sort of main elements. So a couple of main elements. The one, Zar, this thing about, be a contributor to knowledge has answered a lot of questions. That's the takeaway I have. And I encourage everybody to be contributors to knowledge. And I'll talk about just, a little second on that. But the other thing was generosity. And I know we've got patrons here. Zah, you are a patron. We've got other patrons that are on the call, and their generosity to enable Value Ed to continue by contributing and funding some of the students that are on. I'd like to just give a shout out to some of the students that actually came on from Value Ed. We had Carabella who had on, Nonhlanhla who I saw, Bonolo, Menadia and Sejo. I know there may have been others, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for all you patrons that do play a role. We have a drive to have 500 people in Value Ed by the end of the year. We're currently sitting close to 100, and the patrons play a huge role in supporting those students who can't afford the fee of 350 rands for some of our programs. I really want to thank you, and I want to thank you, the hosts who also play a role on our program as well. Chloe is actually a host. She does one of our courses the marketing course that's there. We've got Derek, who hosts Men of Value. So they also play a massive role in generosity. In that generosity role, that's important. We believe in the right to access. And this construct of knowledge is very important, because I believe knowledge leads to understanding. And understanding is the synthesis of knowledge. And when you understand what you're doing rather than are just filled with information, then you can get to that point where Zara is right now, which is all about, utilizing that knowledge for the betterment of others. This is a very sensitive time for me in more ways than one, and it's becoming more so every year, and that's the matric results period. We had matric results and successful results for last year, and congratulations to any of the parents here whose parents, whose kids did very well, and who did well. But one of the things that I want to highlight is this thing that is really occurring consistently, is this, not considering those who didn't cross the border, those who didn't cross the line. And it's important that we don't leave people behind. And I think that's the essential elements of being human, making sure that all people are able to be the best versions of who they can be. And we at ValueAdd are going to be encouraging anyone who feels that they've not quite made it, or feels that they want to continue learning, upskilling and reskilling themselves, and hopefully finances won't be an issue because of the fees that we charge, which are pretty nominal. So I'd like to say thank you, Refilwe, for hosting as usual. You do a remarkable job. Some of the team members from ValueAdd are here. They really work, down to their skin, and are not compensated in the manner that they deserve in terms of the value that they add. And last but not least, to my dear friend, Zah, my business partner in more ways than one, and in more ways my mentor too. I'd really like to thank you for those words of wisdom. You know me, Zah, I always say to you, you need to have had 10 books, a whole TV show about you, because what you speak and what you say is the epitome of not just understanding, but the synthesis of understanding to wisdom. And that's really because you're a reflection and a manifestation of who you are. So thank you for your time, and thank you for everybody who attended on Saturday. Have a happy Saturday. And last week of February, give it your all. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.